So with Godzilla Minus One getting the Academy Award nomination for Best VFX, there's been a lot of talk about how Hollywood can learn from Godzilla Minus One, and why is it that Godzilla Minus One looks so good with such limited budget and personnel, being $50 million and 35-person team. I also want to talk about what the production structure looks like for Godzilla Minus One on the VFX side specifically, and I want to talk about how the Hollywood structure looks like and how it differs from each other. And by VFX, I mean combining both the live action element, like stuff that they've filmed with actors on set, people running around, the actual real stuff that was filmed, combining that with the computer generated imagery like CGI. That's what I mean by VFX. And animation is purely computer generated, so everything you see is generated by a computer, is rendered, and nothing was actually filmed. Watching the behind the scenes here, they're saying we simplify the approval process, and normally VFX require many sign-offs, and they're saying how they then simplify the structure so that the director is working directly with the artist. And also it happens that the director here, Takashi Yamazaki, is also the VFX supervisor at the same time. And the studio here is called Shirogumi, has been around since 1974. So let's talk about the Godzilla Minus One structure. So on the top here we have the director, and he happens to be also the VFX supervisor. I'm sure everybody understands what a director is supposed to do. They're the ones who are giving the direction to the entire movie, what the story to tell, how to tell the story, and things like that. But what does a VFX supervisor do? Usually on the film side, the VFX supervisor's job is twofold. During principal photography, his main job is to make sure the VFX team later on down the line has everything they need to create the most realistic image as they possibly could. So things like capturing LiDAR scans of sets, props, or even actors, or capturing texture references, things like taking photos of what was built, taking photos of walls or structures or props to be replicated later on. Also making sure lighting references are captured. That's where you see those gray or shiny balls moving around the set. That's what those are for. After principal photography has concluded, their job then transitions to overseeing the production of computer-generated imagery all the way from the beginning, from layout, animation, all the way to the final image the audience is going to see. So then we have our Takashi Yamazaki. He is working as both the director and the VFX soup, and under him directly are the artists. So it seems like here, from what they've written here, the director gives notes directly to the artist. But what I actually think may happen is that there's something in between, either the department supervisors or the leads that are in between, because they are the ones who are providing technical support to the artist. But then the feedback process is basically one step, right? Or very close to one step. The artist has a version, it goes to the director, and then the feedback comes back directly from the director. So that is the gist of the Minus One production. So usually in Hollywood, usually for a Hollywood production, we start with a production company. So they're the ones who are making the movie. So they can be, say, something like Warner Brothers or something like Fox or something like Paramount, right? So they're the ones forking the money. So they're the ones paying the big money to get the movie made. And then they would then hire a director, and the director is the one who worked with the production company to say, this is the movie we want to make, this is the script we got, what do you think, who do we need to hire, or what do we need to do, give the directions and things like that, making sure the story is what they want to tell. That's the director's job. And under the director, we would have a VFX soup, and typically we would call this the client-side supervisor. This VFX soup is actually hired by the production company, but he works together with the director to make sure all of the computer-generated elements work well with what was filmed on set. Usually in a Hollywood production, because the production is so massive, there's so much work to do, we will have multiple studios. They're usually called vendors. This could be, say, for example, Weta, right, of Avatar fame, and then this could be LM of Star Wars fame, and then the Studio 3 could be DNEG of Dune fame, right? So these then individual studios have their own VFX soups. So we call these guys in-house supervisors. In-house meaning within the studios, right? So each one of these studios will have their own VFX supervisors, and they're the ones who are overseeing the production inside each of the studios. So every single studio will get a certain number of shots, maybe depending on the size of the studio or how busy they are, they could get anywhere in like 200 shots maybe, and then these guys have 500 shots, and these guys have, say, maybe 350 shots. Under each of the VFX soups in the studio, we will have our department supervisors, and they're the ones overseeing each individual department. Departments like matte painting, departments like animation, and departments like FX, for example. So under each of the department supervisors, we have our leads who are supporting the artists on a day-to-day basis, and under them, we have the artists. So that's the typical Hollywood structure. And when in terms of feedback, what's gonna happen is obviously when the artists have a version, the version usually goes to the lead. So that's our first step review process. But usually the lead doesn't really give too many creative notes, mainly for technical stuff. Say something is broken, right? It's not gonna work. So that's usually things get kicked back, but most of the time we'll pass it along to the department supervisors. And the department supervisor is our second level review. And usually they're the ones who are making sure we're staying within the vision of the director, you know, minor creative notes. Then that will get passed on to our VFX soup. So the studio VFX soup will work a little bit closer with the client-side VFX soups, meaning the director and the VFX soup on the production company side. And they will have a little bit more vision as to, oh, this is what the director wanted, because they're sitting down with the director. They actually hear the notes directly from the director. And once the VFX soup is happy with that, that usually goes to the client-side VFX soup. And that's our fourth level review. And the client-side VFX soup, you know, they're there with the director all the time. They understand what the director wants, mostly. But once the VFX soup is happy, then that goes to the director. And that's usually where the director decides, oh, does it tell the story? Does it look good? Does it do what it needs to do? If not, then that gets sent back and gets reworked on and passed up again. And usually, again, we start from the top from a production company, and they're the ones who wants to produce the animation, say something like Netflix, who wants to make the Avatar or the Maya and the 3 series. That's what they're doing. So they're the ones paying the money, and they would then go ahead and hire a director. And so far, you will notice it's very similar to the film production. Now is where it differs. Usually by this point, the production company and the director sits down together, and they will decide to hire a certain animation studio. Now, the typical thing is a single studio handles the entire production. There are some times that will differ. Say, for example, the Love, Death, and Robots series, where we have multiple smaller episodes, and those each individual episodes are produced by different studios, but they don't really work with each other on the same episode. But in this case, we're talking about a feature-length animation production. So at this point, they will talk to a studio. And on the studio side, of course, we have our VFX soup. And in this case, the VFX soup will work very closely with the director, figuring out what is the vision of the director, what does the director want, what is the look that he wants, and also at the same time, they have an art director, but the VFX supervisor kind of oversees the entire thing. But then we have our department supervisors, and then we have our leads, and then we have our artists. In this case, whenever we have a version, of course, we go up one level, and then we go up another level to the department supervisors. Again, the leads just make sure everything technical is working, and then the department supervisor gets a little bit of creative input, and then it gets to the VFX soup side. Then we're looking at a much more creative involvement, because VFX soup in this case in the studio works really closely with the director already. And then once the VFX soup is happy with the work, then it goes to the director right away. And usually this process is fairly flexible and pretty fast on the animation side, because the director on an animation project doesn't really have to worry about what's going on set. He or she doesn't have to worry about what's going on with other units, other film crews. So now let's compare with the typical Hollywood production. We can see the typical animation production side is a little bit more simplified, and it looks a little bit closer to what the -1 has, where the artist and the VFX supervisors work closely with the director. Well, a little bit closer anyway, because we don't have all these extra layers here in between. And there are a couple of reasons here. Is because Takashi Yamazaki, of course, is a very different director. So he started at Shirogumi as a miniature builder and later on becomes a VFX supervisor and then becomes a director after being a VFX supervisor. So his experience in the VFX side is extensive and he understands what VFX can or cannot do, what are the limitations of a VFX. So when he's writing the script for -1, he takes all of that into account. When Peter Jackson was doing his original Lord of the Rings trilogy where he created a weta for the movies and he understood what was needed, what was necessary, and also he understood the limitations of the technology, right? So when he's writing the script for the original trilogy, he took all of that stuff into account, which results in a much better movie. And I think the Lord of the Rings trilogies today still holds up very, very well. And also a lot of the Hollywood directors don't have the same experience as Yamazaki or Peter Jackson for that matter. And I think Hollywood, of course, can stand to think of VFX as a more integral part of the film rather than an afterthought. So a lot of times there's a lot of VFX involved in the film, but VFX tend to become the afterthought of each movie. You know, a lot of times scriptwriter is separate from the director and they're separate from the VFX soups and they're just writing their script. They don't really take into account what VFX is necessary. If in the scriptwriting process, Hollywood can take into account what VFX is necessary to tell the story, that would help a lot by thinking of the whole movie as a whole instead of as its individual component. And also working closely with the artist would definitely help. I think giving the notes directly or hearing from the director directly would help the artist understand better and also give the artist more connection to the movie and also making sure the artists are more involved in the process. Artists are going to be more invested and they're going to work a little bit harder and they're going to think a little bit more when they're doing their effects work. And also I think with -1, limitation actually was a boon for them, as in when they are limited with the amount of money they have and the amount of time and people they have, they need to think what is absolutely necessary to tell the story. With a bigger budget production, sometimes it becomes a paralysis by analysis kind of situation where the director wants to make a good movie, everybody wants to make a good movie because there's more time and more money. It tends to become, hey, can we try this? Can we try that? Oh, maybe this will be better, maybe that will work better. And so it just keeps going in circles and eventually run out of time and run out of money, and whatever version is there gets approved just because we're out of time and out of money. And that's why there could be a very large discrepancy between the really, really good shots and the not so great shots. So basically for the audience, there's a better product. And then for the artist, the process of making the movie becomes more enjoyable and of course help the artist to prevent burnout and reduce turnover, and also makes the artist feel appreciated and motivated more. And again, all of this just combines together to produce a better film, a better product for the audience. Well, I hope you learned something from this, and let me know what you think. Let me know if I got something wrong. Have you seen the movie -1? I haven't seen Godzilla -1, so if you've seen the movie, was it good or bad? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments, and see you guys later. Bye!